Hello and welcome to the 43 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Weekend Preview. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight's episode brought to us, as always, by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. We know that decision-making is very important in baseball, like hitter decisions, like, hey, do you swing at the strikes and do you take the balls? I'll tell you another decision that comes into play is Joe Healy and I have decided to shake up the lineup tonight. We need to send a message to the club. Things were getting a little stale in the clubhouse, and so we went into the portal and we hired. We just kind of acquired two star players: the great shotgun Spratling, the great Patrick Ebert. Gentlemen, welcome to our locker room. Welcome to the club, and hey, feel free to Wally Pip some people while we're at it. Good evening, fellas.
Thanks for having us, guys.
It's about time you guys came above the Mason-Dixon line to acquire some talent. That's what the real problem is here. You got those bums down, in the below the Mason-Dixon line, just getting, relaxing, taking things easy. We're ready. We're ready to go. We've been, digging through the cold weather, and while we're super excited about the heat, while you guys just been, whining about it, a little bit of rain here and there.
It's a great point, Shotty. This is so apropos. Undervalued talent in Jersey, in Wisconsin, have consistently produced quality college baseball players. I mean, Shotty, you are the Ryan Lasko of the college baseball journalist. Ebert, who was the kid that hit 1 billion home runs for Clemson last year? Who was a Green Bay kid? Anybody right-handed hitter? Say it again.
Max Wagner.
Oh, there you go, Ebert. You're the Max Wagner. Just to, you're
I'll
not.
Take that.
You're not going to win any height contests, but you're dropping bombs, bringing plus power right there. I like it.
That's right. That's exactly what I do.
Very good. And we got Joseph on Joe, you're kind of like the DJ tonight. Well done. You're different style than Kendall, but I like it. It's good. Well done.
I'm going to put my headphones like this, like hold them just over the one ear. That's how
I embarrassed myself the other day. Calvin Harris is a famous DJ. Is that correct? And there's a Calvin Harris that hit 4 home runs. I had raise your hand if you knew that Calvin Harris was a famous DJ. I had no idea. Shotty, of course, you're still your heart's still in LA, Shotty. If we're being honest, you're still kind of Hollywood.
Runes, I would like to say, speaking of LA, I once played a DJ in a GoDaddy commercial. So,
No way.
Wow.
Care to tell us how that came about? Is that tellable?
One of my buddies, he and his brothers make commercials, so it's a GoDaddy contest. So they were submitting a GoDaddy commercial for it, and it was an interesting theme. I can't get all into it, but basically there was a heaven scene in it, and I was playing the DJ, of the party in heaven.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Patrick, wow. Joseph, would you like to share any of your acting career? Anybody else?
When I was in like fourth. Well, yeah, I was going to say when I was in 4th grade, I played, we put on a Shakespearean play in my language arts class, and I played, some character there. That's probably the height of my acting career, was Mrs. Robertson's class in 4th grade. Shout out to Debbie Robertson, Hirsch Elementary.
Hirsch Elementary. What was Hirsch Elementary's nickname?
The Hawks.
Oh, of course. Every grade school, it's alliteration. So my grade school was Culbertson, and of course we were the Culbertson Cougars. Go Cougs. Ebert, grade school and nickname, please.
Ooh. Hillside. I don't think we had a nickname. I think that was before they invented them. It was a pretty long time ago. So, yeah.
You were definitely the Hawks or something, or the Harbor Hawks or something.
Yeah, it was like
Hellcats.
But what town was that, Patrick? I'll look it up while we talk here. Hillside.
It was in Brookfield, Wisconsin. It's actually where I still reside today. So,
love it. Shotty, do you remember your grade school and nickname?
The Spout Springs Seminoles, with all FSU colors and alike as well, all emblems and colors the same.
Can you give us?
So go ahead.
I
became a Florida State fan because of that. Especially that was around the time of Peter Warrick and whatnot, Bobby Bowden running in. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be a Seminole, then I might as well be rooting for the Seminoles at the same time.
That's awesome. Spouse Spring, like your spouse.
Spout Springs.
Spout, like a spigot, like a spout. Got it. Joseph, anything on Hillside?
I think Patrick might be right.
We're
just not really doubted you, Patrick. It's just like, I thought maybe they'd added one later or something like that. But
it's actually closed now. So, yeah, you're going to have a hard time finding that one. It's like
I did see it closed. Closed in 2013. Yeah. Rest in peace to Hillside Elementary School at 2250 Lynette Lane in Brookfield, Wisconsin.
Didn't even make it to get a nickname. Maybe they needed athletics and a nickname, Patrick, or else we would still be in business. Who knows?
Yeah, and just the number of just incredible athletes that have graduated from that program, like me. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Max Wagner of of Hillside Elementary.
The Max Wagner of Hillside. That's me.
That's right. Well said. Oh, that's well done, boys. The let's get into it, gentlemen. So what we're going to do is we're going to preview the 10 series. As most of America knows, I'm 5 games back of Marcus Etheridge. I'm in second place. The fabulous Rune Dogs digging and clawing. I felt like a pro golfer today when I made my picks, because you're torn between not forcing it. You can't force it. Then you're done. But at the same time, like, there's no points for second place, right? Like, nobody cares who finishes second in this thing. So I picked 3 series on purpose to go against Marcus Etheridge so I could maybe move the needle here, but maybe I'm overthinking that a little bit. Joseph, would you like to go first, and then we will go counterclockwise?
Absolutely. I'm just now noticing that I didn't pick enough series off of Mark Etheridge when I did. Although I'm like 6 games back of Mark, so that's really, but
you have 2 weeks. Like, you don't have to make it all up. Like, we have 2 more weekends, right?
I just need to get some wins. Like I need to focus this week on just getting right. Yeah, this week I just need to get right. Get like my mechanics worked out, get things smoothed out. Next week I'll maybe work
save your job. You're just trying to make some type of lower tier bowl game and just
for sure. Yeah, shout out to the Birmingham Bowl. Yeah. Okay. Let me look at this trusty little sheet here. I'm going to go Kentucky and Tennessee, a series that, going into it, I kind of thought that the team that was 12-12 would have been Kentucky in the league, and the team that I thought was going to be 14-10 was going to be Tennessee. And it's the opposite. And so I'm really kind of fascinated on a couple of levels. One is that, Kentucky went such a roller coaster of a season. I mean, they've been good all year, but they got off to such a fast start in SEC play. And you started to think bigger than, will this team just make a regional? I mean, that felt like child's play at some point. Then they fall off and they get swept, in a series 2 weekends ago against Vanderbilt when they played pretty well. And you're kind of thinking, gosh, okay, are they just going to end up being a team that ends up on the bubble in the end? And lo and behold, they sweep South Carolina. Now, again, you're kind of, you start to think about, and your eyes start to get big thinking, hey, if they win this series against Tennessee, they're probably in a position to host when you consider they have number 1 RPI in the country. So that's fascinating. And Tennessee is playing at home. That's good because they don't play very well on the road. That's kind of a weird thing that's happening there. So we'll see if the home cooking helps Tennessee again this coming weekend. One other quick just note on that: Chase Burns didn't pitch last weekend against. Where was I last weekend? Where was that series last week?
Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah, golly. I should get a CAT scan or something. That was brutal. They lose that series against Georgia, and Chase Burns doesn't pitch. He was there, but he it turns out he wasn't on the roster, and I didn't know that until the end of that series was over. So he's obviously a big piece of that puzzle. He's been so electric since they moved him to the bullpen. So not having him removes a card to play there, because Tennessee at the end of that series against Georgia ended up having to kind of recycle relievers in the finale in a way that they probably wouldn't have had to do if they had Chase Burns available. So that can be a little bit of a game changer. But I think this series totally rests on what version of Tennessee that we see, because even when Kentucky wasn't winning games, it kind of was, they were who they were. Sometimes it just was good enough and sometimes it wasn't. So to me, this kind of falls on Tennessee is what version of them do we end up seeing?
Joe, 2 follow-up questions. Did you say Burns, we don't know his status for this weekend, correct? Like, up in the
I
air?
don't. And I'll be honest, I have not dug around for it.
Okay.
But assuming because he didn't pitch last weekend, that at least puts some sort of question mark on it. Now, in postgame on Friday, Tony Vitello last weekend, Friday, mentioned that there were a few guys that had a little bit of soreness. I assume Burns is one of those guys, but it was not because at the time I didn't think to ask because I didn't know that he was on the shelf. So again, I haven't done digging, but because he didn't pitch last weekend is the only reason I say that.
Joe, one follow-up question. I'll ask every previewer this question: between Tennessee and Kentucky, in your humble opinion, who owns the best uniform? Could be the entire set, or if there's just one uniform that exceeds all the others. Who's the best dressed squad in the series?
You know what? People really like the cream Tennessee ones that say Vols across the front. I actually prefer a couple of different sets Kentucky has.
Ooh.
I like the gray vest look that Kentucky has because you don't see a lot of vest anymore. So I'm kind of a fan of that as a little bit of a throwback look. I also like the Kentucky pinstripe, white, blue pinstripe with the interlocking UK kind of on the chest. That's a good look too. So that's actually where I go. And to me, it's kind of hard to mess up that bright blue of Kentucky on the white. That white and that bright blue just really kind of pop. So that's where my mind goes.
That's a contrarian answer because I am all in on the Vols uniforms, like the cream, the orange. They're orange tops that say Vols cursive across for me are amazing. But
yep, they're good. I'm certainly not denying that. I just like the Kentucky ones.
Love where your head's at. Shoddy, give us a player of interest for you.
I think you got to look at Zach Lee. He was outstanding on Sunday in their win, 12 Ks and 6 2/3, longest outing of the season. Perhaps most importantly, though, 0 walks, and that's been something that's got him in trouble, especially in SEC play. So I think if you get to the rubber match and he pitches like he has the last couple of weeks, he was good against Vanderbilt the week before too, then I think you put your cards on Kentucky then.
Very good. Patrick, who are you going with?
For the player to watch, I mean, I think what's just fascinating is kind of seeing, like our field of 64 came out. And if they're really a 2 seed, I mean, that's got to be just such a dangerous 2 seed. And I just wanted to follow up with that just because, like, when I think about what they did a year ago, and I was at that super regional when Notre Dame knocked them off, and I think that was about the worst matchup for Tennessee to face. Based on Notre Dame didn't get a host of regionals. They went to Statesboro. They went to Knoxville. They were used to playing on the road and kind of proving people wrong. And I just think that was a tough matchup. So I don't necessarily have a player in that series I'm watching. I just think that whole Tennessee team is loaded, and I can't believe that they're not already in the hosting picture right now.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think we've been saying that all year that if you're an East Coast host, you either hope Tennessee just continues to be terrible on the road, or you hope they host because they are going to be an ugly 2 seed.
Yep.
Hey, you said Zach Lee, right, Shoddy?
Yep.
And I think, Joe, you've kind of by default put Chase Burns out there. I'm going to put Travis Smith. Is he the freshman that started the Friday game for Kentucky, Joe?
Yeah, redshirt freshman, yep.
And he was excellent. What was the genesis of that, Joe? Why did he start that game? Is he in the rotation legitimately now?
It's a good question. I haven't seen the projected rotation this week for Kentucky, but I think this was something that they always felt like was on the table. I mean, he had been their midweek starter, and he had been throwing mostly real starter innings. It wasn't, an opener type situation. It was they were trying to get him through 4, 5, 6 in the midweek. So, and the stuff is good. So I think there was always a feeling that maybe it would go this direction. I think the other thing is that for a long time, they had been piggybacking Logan Martin and Darren Williams. And as the season has gone on, they've been getting a little bit less out of Logan Martin. And he was been banged up at various points of the season. So I think there was maybe a feeling that, hey, let's try to get some depth in that game and maybe not have to use Darren Williams in that game. We can then kind of pick and choose where we use Darren Williams, who's one of their, depending on how you stack it up, one of their 2 best relievers, either him or Mason Moore.
Yeah. God, it's a great series because I think both teams leave all of us confused as to what we think. Like what we think of these 2 teams, it has a lot of, it's all over the map. So it'll be another data point. Shoddy, go ahead. Give us series number 2. What do you want to preview?
Let's go to the West Coast. Washington at Oregon. Oregon is the team that's ranked, but Washington is the team that's coming in hot. I mean, they've won a couple series in a row after losing 3 Pac-12 series. They've won 8 of 9 now, and they're the healthier team. Oregon had lost a series at USC. USC obviously plays really well at home, but didn't have Jay Sofall, who was moved back in the rotation and then didn't pitch at all. Same thing happened to USC with Tyler Stromsburg. So both Friday starters didn't go, but much bigger hit to Oregon in that regard. And then also Sabin Sabalos is just playing on one leg right now. There was a double play ball at one point where he's just basically walking up the line, and it's in a big moment of the game. But obviously, you want to keep his bat in there if you can, because he then later in the series hit a home run. So, Oregon's beat up right now. You want to see them try to get healthy as the season concludes. But this has always been a big rivalry series, especially on the Washington side. They want to get at Oregon, back and forth in football, baseball, a little bit of everything. So, I think it's going to be a fun series. But I think Washington can go on the road and make some noise right here. And then I think Oregon, they're fighting for the potential of hosting. They need to win a couple of series here at the end of the season to get back in that mix.
Love it. Patrick, a player of interest or a theme of interest, if you want.
Yeah, no, the player that I'm most interested in is Drew Cowley. And I think just mainly because that Oregon lineup overall, it just kind of fascinates me. And it fascinates me from a similar perspective as Stanford. Because Oregon's a team, especially like when George Horton was there, just kind of building with that pitching and defense profile. And it's not that they don't have that, but they don't have that to the extreme they did in the past. And when you see these guys, looking at their stat line right now, they got 3 guys with double-digit home runs. And really, to be perfectly honest, I remember talking about Oregon with you back, years ago, and you wouldn't see 3 guys in their lineup with 3 double-digit home runs. And I think that part is fascinating. The same is true for Stanford, when they would just scratch and claw their way to like 2-1 wins consistently. And now we're seeing this Ducks team and Stanford, winning 13-10 in games like that. So when I see a guy, who's hitting 335 with 13 home runs, 52 RBIs, and putting up the numbers that he is, I mean, that really jumps off the page to me.
I like that. You know what, boys? I'm gonna go a unit here. I'm gonna say Washington's rotation, because I'm realizing as we're speaking that Washington's rotation is really underrated. Now, I'm assuming their weekend rotation is Jared Engman, Stu Flusland, and Kiefer Lord. Kiefer Lord's the famous one because he's got all that arm strength, but all 3 of them have really, really good numbers and have basically made every start. All 3 of them have 11 or 12 starts. And that is an area where Oregon feels vulnerable. So give me the Washington rotation as a place where they can separate themselves in this theory. By the way, I picked the Huskies and Mark Etheridge picked Oregon, so go Huskies. Joe?
So where I was going to make
it fair.
I was going to make so Jared Ingman's interesting. Like, you just don't see a lot of pitchers like him. I mean, the ERA is good. Like, he's getting relatively deep into games, but he has more walks than strikeouts. But it's also not that the numbers are that high. Like, you don't see many guys who are effective who have like under 4.5 Ks per 9. Like, that's just not really a thing you see very, very often anymore. I was distracted there for a second before I started talking because I realized that I picked Oregon, and like as I was looking at these teams, I was like, I'm not sure I might make that change before tomorrow. I got to be honest with you guys.
White out.
My player is Will Simpson. For the second year in a row, quietly just a monster year. 15 home runs, and I think similar to the point Patrick made about Oregon, Washington's not really a team you necessarily think of having those types of bats. They've had it in the past, Joe Wainhouse famously, right? But outside of him, like, they usually have maybe one guy who can run the ball out of the ballpark at a time. And now they've got a couple, him and AJ Guerrero chiefly, but just 15 home runs for a player at Washington is not anything to sneeze at. And he's, again, quietly just been this really consistent power bat for that team the last couple of years.
Joe, I want you to know I'm going to send Fitzy a note that you should show up in Omaha with +50 on the nonsense tracker for the Joe Wainhouse reference, because he is one of my favorite all-time players. Washington's 2018 Omaha team.
The ideal male form, Joe Wainhouse.
He was the best. You know what I loved about Joe Wainhouse besides the fact that he was 6 foot? He looked like, a professional wrestler, and he had the goggles and the great hair, and he had socks up and high tops and the whole thing. He would swing and miss the ball by 100 feet with no concern. It was like the Washington coach staff had just taught him, you just let it wail, and whatever happens. And he would swing and miss a ton, but the other pitching coach was like, oh my gosh, this is not comfortable, because if we make a mistake, he's going to literally hit it 7,000 feet.
To wit, his 2019 season, which was not his best year, but it was his last year there, 77 strikeouts and 172 at-bats.
Yeah. I mean, after a while, I feel like that wears on a player. So, but he was so important in 2018 when they went.
Yeah, and that 18 run, he was great. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, he was as hot as anybody down the stretch. Yeah,
and unique. Yeah, for sure. Ebert, pick a series for us.
Yeah, I'm taking the mid-major. I'm going with my mid-majors series of the week between Dallas Baptist and UTSA, Texas San Antonio. I find the two teams fascinating, both at the top of the Conference USA standings. DBU, of course, being the newcomer in that conference. If you look at the numbers, you look at the records, like it's almost nearly identical. The two teams are playing like so close and like mirrored to one another. I think that's what makes this series especially fascinating. I think, UTSA has a little more sum of its parts kind of going for them. They got a couple stars. I believe it's Antonio Valdez and, Simon Miller, their closer, who is just putting up ridiculous seasons. And then for Dallas Baptist, they had a couple guys hit multiple home runs in games last week, Grant Jays and Nathan Humphreys. And then they got 3 legit weekend starters. They got a legit closer. It's Dallas Baptist. It's what they do every year in and year out under Dan Hefner. And I just think this is a really fascinating matchup. DBU is right on the cusp of that hosting picture. I can't remember if they were a host today or not. I want to say they weren't. But I think they had them as one a week ago, so that just shows you, despite having a winning week, they're out of the hosting picture now. So obviously a win, and this series is at San Antonio, I believe. A win on the road here would be huge for the Patriots, but at the same time, it'd be huge for the Roadrunners too. Obviously, knocking out, even though there's a newcomer in that league, knocking off DBU for UTSA, like I'm sure they view themselves somewhat as the underdog. It's a big series this weekend, and I'm really excited to follow it.
And Patrick, the fact that you showed command of both teams' mascots, the Patriots and the Roadrunners, was outstanding. Well done by you. Shotty, I
didn't have one. Remember rings?
That's right. Yeah, you have mascot envy.
Mascot.
Yeah. That's awesome. Shotty, I'll go last on this one. Go for it. Who do you like here?
I gotta go with my guy Cody Colton. Wazoo transfer, 330, stealing 12 bases for Dallas Baptist. And Dallas Baptist has won 20 of 23. So, they're red hot coming into this. And this is a battle for first place, 20-4 in Conference USA versus 19-4. And like, Ebert said, it's an RPI battle too, because for Dallas Baptist, chance to host versus UTSA coming in at 55. This is a huge series for the Roadrunners. If they can sweep, suddenly you get vaulted up. You're feeling really comfortable. You get swept, and you're like, all right, we got to win the conference tournament. So, a ton of pressure on this weekend. But I'm going with my guy, Colton. I liked him at Wazoo. They got him playing third base at Dallas Baptist, and he's been a solid contributor as a grad transfer for him.
Tough name to say, Cody Colton. What, Joseph? What do you got? What do you got for a player of interest?
First of all, Shotgun makes a really good point, because that's part of what I was going to say, is that both of these teams are on a respective RPI bubble. I mean, that's why DBU, Patrick, you were right. They were in as a host 2 weeks ago, or last week, if you want to call it that. And in this most recent update, we're not. And their RPI is sitting at something like, where are we at? 26. But if they win this road series, to Patrick's point, and especially if they sweep, they're probably going to be right there. And also, that would put them in the catbird seat to win the league, which would be another feather in their cap to earn a host spot. The same is true for UTSA. They're, as I scroll here, something like 50, 54. Same deal. They win this series, suddenly they're probably in decent shape to be an at-large bid, or at least be in the conversation. And also, oh, by the way, would probably be in a position to win the conference, which would be a feather in their cap to earn the at-large if they need it. So my player is Simon Miller. Patrick mentioned it. I saw him. I went to they played a doubleheader at Charlotte, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I guess. And got to see Simon Miller throw. And he's really an interesting guy, because he's not really lighting up a radar gun, although he did pop a 6 while I was there, 96. But that was kind of an outlier. He was mostly in the low 90s, but it's so many uncomfortable swings on his fastball, and it's very fastball heavy. So he's got to be one of those guys that the ball just jumps on hitters a little bit, because the numbers suggest that and nobody's having a comfortable at bat against him. The ERA is obviously great, 136. The strikeouts are great, 67 and 53 innings. But the thing for me is that he's only given up 1 home run the entire season in 53 innings, and that's for a reliever. That's important because that means he's not throwing gasoline on fires.
Ooh, I like it. You know what? DBU is very fascinating. I'm going to go to the DBU side, but you kind of picked my pocket there, Joe. I think Simon Miller is a very important person in this series. DBU also has an incredible bullpen. It's somewhat similar to their 2015 team, but and it's arm strength, but not quite that kind of crazy arm strength when they hosted in 2015. They also are running more than usual. They've got 4 guys with double-digit stolen bases this year. But give me my man Ethan Mann, who's DHing for them. He's got 14 home runs. He's got 57 RBIs, 1,100 OPS. I mean, it's funny. I feel like DBU, Dan Hefner will tell you we're kind of a 1 through 9 lineup, and it's about, to shoddy your expression, some of the parts. But at the same time, like, they've got several dudes with monster numbers. So give me Ethan Mann at DH. I'm interested to learn more about this group. So, by the way, this is another series where me and Mark Etheridge have we're differed here. So let's if you hear me, UTSA, let's go Runners.
If you're going to follow this meep, if you will, if you're going to follow this series, Runes this weekend, you have to pony up for CUSA.TV.
Yeah,
because that's where that's going to be. Patrick,
hello, stat broadcast. Yeah, that's not.
No ponying up for this guy. Nope.
No, that's not going to be in the Rooney family budget.
Let's get Kendall and Aaron to this is a big series. Just tell Kendall and Aaron you're going to expense it, Patrick.
Put it on.
Tell them I told you could.
Put it on the emails.
Because that'll matter.
Yes, well said. Boys, I'm going to go Tech at Texas Tech at West Virginia. Obviously, a huge series for Texas Tech. They've got one of the most polarizing resumes right now, 500 in the Big 12. Texas Tech needs this. And for West Virginia, this is a chance for them to continue to we think they're the best team in the Big 12. This is a, put up series for West Virginia. West Virginia's got an awesome team. They've got a really good rotation. I would argue they've got the most consistent rotation in the Big 12. That's a big part of why they're winning. They've got the Big 12 Player of the Year in J.J. Weatherholt. Texas Tech is very talented, but they've been mercurial, if I could use that word. They're young. I think that's part of Tech's situation is that this is a younger team. But again, Tech is offensive, just like you think. They've got arm strength, just like you think. Their roles on the mound are unsettled. West Virginia is very settled. They know who they are. It's been a very similar team from the front of the season to the back. So very, very important series. Joseph, player of interest for you.
I'm going to go with a fun player, not necessarily the most consequential player, although he is among the most consequential players for Texas Tech, and that's Nolan Hester, who is a Wofford transfer, played 4 years at Wofford. Wofford, of course, no graduate school at Wofford, so all their guys who've played 4 years just have to leave. So he's at Texas Tech now. So here's the stat that stands out. He's had 62 free passes this year, and by that I mean combined walks and hit by pitches. 62 free passes. He struck out 19 times. And that's been his whole career. Like, I remember when I was writing him up for the transfer rankings, that he's had more walks and strikeouts, I think, every year of his career, even going back to Wofford. And I kind of wondered, okay, the SoCon is an offensive league. Is that going to translate when he gets to the Big 12? And the answer is absolutely yes. And so he's just a very Texas Tech kind of player too. He's undersized. He's not like an elite defender, but he plays a few different places. He's, got, I won't say it's a mullet, but it's like a mullet-esque type of haircut. It's flowing out of the back a little bit. Yeah. And he's got kind of like a, what's the phrase I want to use? Like a dirty mustache, because his hair is kind of light colored. So it's just like kind of real furry and it's just it's a West Texas look that he's got going on. But just a fun little player, and he's really fit right in with that lineup and has been a big part of it.
Yep. Hey, by the way, we'll backtrack on the uniforms between West Virginia and Tech. I will go West Virginia. Tech's got good uniforms. West Virginia's got some really bad uniforms and some great uniforms. I'll go West Virginia. I like the extremes. Shoddy, give me your player of interest, and in your series, Washington and Oregon, who's got the best unis?
I mean, do you ever go against Oregon just because of the sheer number of combinations? There's something for everyone. There's something you're going to like. So I feel like that you got to give them that because of how many they have. My player of interest, though, in the West Virginia Texas Tech series is Tevin Tucker. I've just been, I got a chance to talk to him a couple weeks ago when I went out there, and he was just such a delight to talk to. But you look at his stats the first 3 years, and it is all defense. He hit under 200 3 straight years, and yet, he didn't play in 2021, but, the 3 years of his career, and yet was a starter every game because that's how valuable he is up the middle as a shortstop defensively for him. But this year he's put it all together. And I asked him, I asked Randy Mazey, how is this happening? How do you go from being a career sub 200 hitter to suddenly he's hitting 330? They moved him in the lineup at the leadoff spot when JJ Weatherholt was at, and just was phenomenal for about 5 or 6 games straight. Has continued that, hitting 338 this season with a 483 on base percentage. It's not just that he gets hits right now. He just works at bats. He has been phenomenal for them, taking that huge jump forward. And the answer I got when I asked, how is this happening, is he just relaxed. Just kind of let it, don't worry about it. Don't worry about draft. Don't worry about anything else. Hey, you get a hit, go out there, work the pitchers, and you're going to be in front of J.J. Weatherholt. And that's a great thing to hear for any hitter when they see what J.J. Weatherholt has done this season. And I think he's taking it to heart, similar with Carlson Reed. Carlson Reed had really struggled in his career until this year, and the big thing was, hey, he relaxed and realized, I can do this. And both those guys have been such key elements for this West Virginia team. And it's been really fun because you love seeing those guys that have struggled earlier in their career really take a jump forward and be impact players. And both of those two guys have been for West Virginia. So I'll give you 2 right there with both those guys, one on the pitching side, one on the offensive side.
Love it. Ebert, player of interest, and don't forget your favorite uniform between DBU and UTSA.
Yeah, I'll have to go with DBU. I like those whites where it just, has the team name. It's a very crisp look. Similar to Kentucky that Joe was saying before, when you put that blue Kentuckian script on that white background. I mean, that's just hard to beat. I mean, you don't have to get too fancy sometimes with these things. But I'm not going to let shotgun steal Carlson Reed completely, because I just, when I see his name, this is a guy I covered 2 summers ago, and his development per shotgun's point has been very impressive. A big part of his success this year has been a change in role. They put him in as the closer. I think that's helped him a lot. That he was trying to be developed as a starter for a couple summers, and for last season, he got pushed back in kind of a more of a piggyback starter role, and he's got a good fastball. It's, low to mid to sometimes upper 90s, and he's got a good slider, and he's got a good changeup too. But his problem at times was just sequencing those pitches, and you could see it, because he'd throw one, he'd be like, wow, that's really good, but then you want to see that pitch again for a few innings. And I think just putting him in that closer role, the walks are still elevated, but I don't think they're quite as dangerous in that role when he's just really letting it loose and doing his thing. So that'd be my guy to watch on West Virginia.
Love it. Joe, have you done a player of interest in this series or not yet?
You did, right? No. Yeah, Nolan Hester. Yeah,
Nolan Hester. That's right. The dirty mustache. Boys, let's do our second sponsor before we keep going. Blast Baseball is our second sponsor for the podcast. If you're ready to dominate at the plate, Blast Baseball is trusted by more MLB and college teams than any other hitting solution. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat, providing real-time feedback with every swing. Go to blastmotion.com. Enter the code D1Baseball at checkout. You get $10 off. That's blastmotion.com, and enter D1Baseball at checkout. Joseph, you want to kick us off for round 2 here?
Let's do it. Let's go Florida Vanderbilt. I think this is a series. I don't want to. I guess I'm starting to say it now. It's like I think Aaron is going to this series, or at least he was talking about it. So there might be some coverage there, but unless things have changed. Fascinating. Florida might be the most talented team in the SEC. I talked to an SEC head coach a few weeks back that said that was the most talented team they'd seen all year. And yet the lineup is great. The pitching has been inconsistent, and not just the bullpen. I'm as worried about the starting pitching for Florida as I am for the bullpen, because Brandon Sproat has starts where he's great. He also has starts where he really has trouble getting anybody out. Hurston Waldrop has, gives up runs early in games, and sometimes he figures it out and sometimes he doesn't. He also recently had to change his motion. I don't know how much folks have heard about this necessarily, but in one of his starts 2 weeks ago, I guess it was drawn to the attention of the umpires that the way he had been the way he'd been delivering the ball was not allowed by rule. Wow. And it got called out. And so now they've had to basically on the fly adjust his mechanics. which is interesting because it's apparently the way he threw the ball at Southern Miss, and nobody had noticed or cared. So it's kind of interesting. So that has not obviously been easy. Adjusting mechanics in the off season is hard enough, much less on the fly. So there's that. And then of course, Jack Caglione on the mound has struggled to throw strikes, and there's really no other way to put that. And so that's going to be key for them. And Vanderbilt, once again, they're kind of in this injury thing where Carter Holton's status is up in the air now for this weekend, which I thought he was kind of fully back to feeling good. I didn't even realize that was really on the table. Hunter Owen is back. That helps. Devin Futrell has been throwing the ball well. But when Vanderbilt's on, I think I've been telling people on radio hits and podcasts and stuff that, look, when Vanderbilt is all together and healthy, they might be the most well-rounded team in the SEC, because the SEC has a lot of really good offenses, but not so many pitching staffs you feel great about. And Vanderbilt at something close to full strength, their pitching staff you feel pretty good about. So two really talented teams, two teams vying for national seeds. They could both be national seeds, so that the level of play this weekend in that series is going to be really, really high.
Uniform, Joe? Who do you like?
Oh, I guess Vanderbilt. I'm actually not much of it, and that's just because Florida doesn't feel like Florida has a lot of like, you know, that's a lie, actually. I like the kind of cream that say Gators across the front.
Those are strong.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about those. I was going to default to Vanderbilt, but I'm actually someone I don't really care for the black gold pinstripes.
Right.
A lot of people like those, and hey, I'm here for garish uniforms. Hey, let's do it. Let's get crazy. Like, I'm into it, but that one just has never really done it for me.
Joe, +5 for the word garish. Thank you for that. Shoddy, player of interest?
Can I first say I hate those uniforms because they wear those black uniforms on Friday, and it's at night. And as a photographer, I can't get good shots. It's much more difficult. And it's usually, there's Kumar Rocker. And Kumar Rocker also has a darker tone of skin, which it makes it even more difficult. There's just not enough light, with those uniforms. So they suck on Fridays. Those are fine on Sundays during the day, but on Fridays, not very good for photographers. So, I'm not a fan of those. But, Carter Holton's the guy. Is he going to be available? Is he not? If you don't have your Friday night guy in the SEC, things don't usually go very well for you. I mean, Vanderbilt has been a team that is probably the most tested in this conference, I feel like. Because outside they actually went on the road and did some things. I know sometimes that's not allowed in the SEC to go on the road or to even go outside your state. I know some of the teams don't do that. But Vanderbilt is the one that has done that the most frequently over time. So going into Florida, I don't think is a big challenge for them as far as the atmosphere and whatnot. And I think they're a team that can put the pieces together in different ways, unlike some other teams. Some teams got to bash you, some teams got to pitch you, but they can kind of mix and match the way they can win games. So, I think Vanderbilt, if they can get Carter Holton, pitching this weekend is huge for them. But, I rely on their depth of talent a little bit more than, some of the other teams in the conference.
Yep. Patrick, who you like here?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up Hunter Owen just because he really stood out when I had the chance to see Vanderbilt play up in Minneapolis. And, it's pretty cool, just covering a series in Minneapolis in early March, and you get a couple of SEC schools come up there because that doesn't happen ever. But Hunter Owen, I was familiar with Carter Holton and a lot of the other players in their team, obviously, but Hunter Owen's a guy I didn't know much about. And you get this big towering lefty, and I know he hasn't, been healthy the past week or for however long, but just seeing him pitch and just like the kind of like you could tell, like from one pitch to the next, he's still working on his game. But as the game progressed, he found more and more comfort, and the stuff was plenty good. Low to mid 90s, good secondaries, all that stuff. The size, worked downhill, really competed. He's kind of got that nasty streak to him where he just wouldn't give in. And I just really like what I saw from him there. And like with Florida, you got such a loaded team, and it reminds me of so many Florida teams we've watched the past decade or more. But this one, like from my perspective, just being a big fan of the draft, I just love the number of names in this entire series because it is absolutely loaded.
Yeah, there'll be some heat at this series. I mean, like you could get a lot of work done as a scout here. I'm not going to overthink this. I'm going to go with the Jack Wagon, Jack Caglione. He's got. Hey, here's the thing. Like he's an inconsistent player, but he's got 27 home runs and 69 RBIs. It's just fascinating. He's just walked 11 times this year. Like he's the scariest dude in college baseball, and there's no way you're pitching to him, and he won't let you walk him. But I will say this, like, he has such a role for Florida. If he has a good weekend, in theory, he's taking over the series. I don't know that I would say he has taken over any SEC series this year. Maybe that's unfair because Florida's got so many other good players. That's not really a possibility for him to do. But yeah, give me the jackwagon. Jack Caglione, looking at you. Shoddy, you up next?
I believe so. I got to go back out to the West Coast. So, Arizona State going to USC. Big matchup for both teams. USC right outside the bubble. I think we had them the third team out or fourth team out of the tournament right now. They've got an opportunity, though. They go into the final 2 weekends. They have 13 wins in the Pac-12. If they can win their last 2 series, which is Arizona State at home, they played really well at home. They have 23 wins at home now. And then they go to Arizona. If they can win both those series, they'll have at least 17 wins in the Pac-12. And teams just don't get left out of the postseason when they have 17 wins in the Pac-12. So it hasn't really happened, at least in the last half decade, going back, looking at the standings and whatnot. So they're trying to get to that mark to kind of give them confidence going into the Pac-12 tournament that they can, be a team that gets in. Their RPI will get bumped up a little bit if they win those 2 series. So really huge for them. ASU, they're backsliding. They've lost 6 of 7. Those have been road series. They're going on the road once again. They did get Ryan Campos back. I know he's Runes' favorite. That's been a big piece for them. Catching, and Luke Keishel's been a monster, maybe Pac-12 Player of the Year. But their starting pitching has been bad to atrocious recently. I mean, Ross Dunn hasn't pitched. He's got, all the stuff, but he hasn't pitched more than 5 1/3 innings in Pac-12 play. And he's, started the year as their guy to lead off the weekend. If you're not getting, deeper into the game, now you're taxing that bullpen early in the weekend. And then you're having the same thing with Christian Curtis. I mean, those guys, Christian Curtis got a 7.69 ERA right now. That's eye-opening in a bad way. And you're putting a lot of stress on some of the other pieces, to try to give you multiple appearances during the weekend. So Arizona State trying to get back on track, USC trying to solidify themselves and, make that final push after a big series win against Oregon after they kind of been written off once again. As long as they stay off the road against top 25 teams, they've been pretty good, especially because that guy at the top of the lineup, I've listened to these each week. I listen to the podcast on my drives. And each time USC's come up, you guys always pick players from the other team. And no one wants to talk about Austin O'Verne. I'm telling you, I literally stop everything I'm doing anytime because, covering games on the East Coast, I'm riding home or I'm stopped, I'm working. When he comes up to that, I stop everything I'm doing because he is absolutely electric. And I had a great conversation with Travis Jewett for a podcast this week. You guys can check it out on the USC site I work for. But he talked about Austin O'Verne and said, yeah, that kid's a big leaguer, no doubt. He hit his 13th triple yesterday. He's leading the nation in that, and he's 4 away from, tying the national record as a freshman. He's already close to tying an NCAA record, and he's got at least 2 games potentially in the Pac-12 tournament where there were 8 triples last year and 2 inside the park home runs in the tournament. And he's got a series in spacious, very, very spacious, high Corbett Field. So there's an opportunity there for him to potentially get a couple more and, push that record or push towards getting that record. So it should be a fun series this weekend. And, Austin O'Verne's a guy you guys got to check out if you haven't yet.
Which unis, Shoddy? Who do you like? These are 2 good unis, depending on how you feel about it.
The classic whites for USC with just the Trojans and the classic SC interlocked, it's hard to beat because there's so many photos around Dado Field of those same uniforms winning national titles. I don't know if you guys have heard, but USC's won 12 and no one else has as many as half of that, or the closest is half of that. So
I like it. Ebert, player of interest.
Yeah, before we get into that, this series I find fascinating, and the national titles is a big part of that because I became a huge college baseball fan in the 1990s, and that's when USC and Arizona State were playing extremely good baseball, and I don't really have anything past that, but I just think of these 2 teams being icons in my memory. The past 10, 20 years, that hasn't been the case, and to see both these teams playing on this level again is fun to see. And I just, I don't follow the Pac-12 all that much just based on what I do. But certainly I try to follow as many teams. And the one name that stands out to me is Caden Aoki He started his career at Notre Dame. He's a starter now for USC, and I'm just, he's the type of guy, I look at his name, I'm just like, yeah, I want to see what he's doing now, because when he was at Notre Dame, he was upper 80s, low 90s, had pretty good curveballs, had a good changeup, but just didn't really find his spot at Notre Dame, hit the transfer portal, headed back west. Seems to be a great fit for him. And it's just cool to see guys like that you have a familiarity with at another program having success somewhere else.
Yep. Joseph, who do you like in this series? Player of interest?
Building off what Patrick said, the 98 title game is the first college baseball game that I remember watching on TV. I had been to college baseball games in person, just like locally going to U of H or Rice games growing up. But that was the first game I remember seeing on TV. So shout out to Morgan Ensberg. Also, additionally, Shotgun mentioned cavernous High Corbett Field. Rumor has it there's still a Cameron Cannon double that's rolling to the wall at High Corbett Field that they just gave up on.
Nice.
That's how cavernous that is.
Oh, that's a great reference right there.
So, I'm going with Luke Keeschel for Arizona State, just a San Francisco transfer who I thought, and I really don't mean this as a pejorative, but when he transferred from San Francisco to Arizona State, I was like, he's a really nice player. And I kind of thought that was the extent of it. I thought he'd be a really nice player for Arizona State, but it turns out they've got a superstar with Luke Keeschel. It's 364 average. It's 23 doubles, which is absurd. 16 home runs, 16 stolen bases. The strikeout rate is really, really good. He's just been everything and more, I think, that Arizona State could have wanted, and has given their lineup some punch in the middle that without him, they've got some nice players. Don't get me wrong. When Campos is healthy, he's great. Jacob Tobias is having a nice year. Luke Hill, et cetera, et cetera. But without him, it's a very different lineup.
I like it. By the way, people playing the D1Baseball podcast bingo game. The great Jennifer Rooney activated her neutral bullet at the 31-minute mark tonight. So she always does this. Yes, thank you. I had been calling it a blender, and I got scolded for that. It is a neutral bullet. So there you go. Clarification.
Good to know.
Yeah, Shadi, you mentioned so ASU is really struggling on the front end, as you mentioned. I wanted to go Christian Curtis because he is too talented to just keep not getting to the fourth inning. But I'm going to actually go Blake Soderstrom for Southern Cal. He's the transfer from Northridge, and he's had a great year for them. 54 innings, 63 Ks, 3.13 ERA. I think he threw almost a CG a week ago, not last weekend, but the weekend before. He's the best starter in this series, in my opinion. And so if he does his thing, then that's a huge advantage for SC. Now, the problem is I think Arizona State's offense is really good. And now that Campos is back in, like you mentioned, Shadi, I watched them most of the weekend against Stanford, and they were game. Like Arizona's position player group was ready to party with Stanford. Arizona State's pitchers were not ready to party with Stanford. Be that as it may, it was still 3 very close games. But Blake Soderstrom's a significant advantage to me for SC, so I'll pick him. Joe, did you do a player?
Mike, real quick on Soderstrom. It's been really interesting because he was a Friday guy at CSUN and kind of got moved out of that role because he struggled. They really worked to manipulate the fastball a little bit and get some life to it during the fall, and you've seen him progress as the season is going on. He was kind of a spot starter, a long inning guy for early in the season. Only a couple weeks ago did he move into the weekend rotation, and that was on Sunday. He pitched on short rest on Friday because Tyler Stromsborg had a back issue and got pushed back to Sunday and ended up not starting. That's a question mark for USC still going into this week as well. But Soderstrom on short rest picks up Pac-12 pitcher of the week, set a career high with strikeouts and whatnot. So he's been a really good story for them. A really late addition. The coaching staff was picked up late, so transfer portal, not the big names necessarily, but the guys you guys have each talked about. Caden Aoki, transfer portal, was hurt at Notre Dame. Brought his brother in, Connor Aoki. You have the Aoki backstop. Connor's been a little bit banged up right now, but the transfers they brought in have been really big parts for Bryce Martin, Gruzelanek as well from UCLA, Ryan Jackson from Nevada. So a lot of credit to that USC coaching staff for what they were able to do and just having this team competitive after a late cycle hire, and the fact that there's barely any talent left on that roster after you hit graduation, draft, and transfer portal, because a lot of the guys had already transferred out by the time the coaching staff was hired. So got to give a lot of credit to Andy Stankiewicz, Seth Etheridge, Travis Jewett, that whole staff.
Yep.
Runes, I'm surprised to hear you say that Arizona State pitching was not ready to party with Stanford, because here I thought Arizona State was always ready for a party.
That's a great call out right there. They're, I will say, like, the school, President Crow has done a wonderful job in a lot of ways. But you're right. The party ranking for Arizona State is often very, very high. They are kind of like the Alabama football of the collegiate party scene, if you will. Joe, did you pick a player or not yet?
I did. Keishel.
Oh, Keishel, that's right. Oh, that's a good call. Hey, boys, we got 4 series left. Let's do this because I want to try to keep it under an hour if we can. So let's go rapid fire. I'll go with the first series, and each of us is going to do this. We're going to just do a player of interest, no explanation, player of interest, and which team's uniforms you prefer, and then we'll rock it. We'll rapid fire our way through it. So, but we'll continue to pick the series. But the only answers we're giving are a player of interest and a uniform. I am going to go. Wow, this is a tough one. I'll go K-State at Oklahoma State. The uniforms I prefer, Oklahoma State's black tops, are just amazing. I can still picture Pete and Cavilla wearing that. And my player of interest is Rock Riggio because he is getting smoking hot right now. Joseph, uniform and player in the series.
Oklahoma State white with the bat on it. You know, the classics. Tyson Neighbors, Kansas State, flame-throwing closer.
Good call. Shoddy, uni and player.
I mean, the best uni is I have to agree with Joe on that one. But, give me Nolan McLean, coming back and, getting back in the mix for Oklahoma State. I think he's the guy that, can be the big difference maker for him.
Ebert, uni and player of interest.
I'm going to go K-State just for the uni.
Yeah.
And I do agree Oklahoma State's classic. And I say K-State too, just from watching them on the court basketball tournament. Like, they've rebranded that athletic department really well, and they've kind of latched onto that purple. Not too many people do purple well, so including myself. So yeah, I would have chosen Tyson Neighbors first. I mean, his numbers are ridiculous, but I'm going to go with Nolan Schubert just because I picked him in the preseason as our freshman of the year. So
Michigan kid, right, Ebert?
That's right. Yep.
Ebert. Now I'm gonna -10 for you for picking purple in K-State because as a Packers fan, I feel like picking purple, although really it's more problematic to go Bears than Vikings, right?
I didn't even think about that. You were 100% correct, Rune. So yeah. I will wear that shame with unfortunate pride. Yeah.
That's all good. It was good. Joseph, series, player, uniform, please.
Series is Arkansas and South Carolina in Fayetteville. I'm going to go uniform, the cream Arkansas with the A on the chest.
Yes.
And player, let's go Will Sanders. I mean, how good Will Sanders is or isn't for South Carolina really sets the tone for their whole weekend.
Yep. Hey, Joe, before we go to Shoddy, any injury updates for Arkansas, Wegner, Josenberger, Stovall, any, or we don't know yet?
Circle back. Hang on. Let me look it up. Circle back to me. I feel like one of the beat writers for Arkansas put something out the other day. Okay. So let me do some digging there real quick.
You got it. Shoddy, uniform and player, please.
Yeah, I love the script of the A with those cream uniforms, like Joe was talking about for Arkansas. The player is the South Carolina starting pitching. They've got to live up to the billing. They weren't very good last weekend. They got to be better.
Yep. Ebert, uniform and player.
Same uniform. That Arkansas classic look is just so great. Especially on a sunny day. You see them in Omaha. It makes it happen.
Awesome.
Player would be Hagen Smith. I love how Arkansas is using him this year. Saw him last year as a freshman. Obviously, really talented then. Taking his game to another level, and it just seems when he's on the mound, that team's going to win.
Yep. I would concur with you guys. Arkansas has got unbelievable uniforms. I will say South Carolina's black top, I love. I really like that. South Carolina's got great uniforms. They're just not as good as Arkansas's, in my opinion. I'm going to go South Carolina. I don't know if he's playing this weekend, but Braylon Wimmer, whether he plays this weekend or does not, speaking of, by the way, his dad, Chris Wimmer, was an unbelievable player at Wichita State back in the heyday, showing my age there. But Braylon Wimmer's important. Like, if South Carolina can't get healthy in this infield, man, I am very, very concerned that they become a vulnerable host if they can hang on and host. But give me Braylon Wimmer if he's going to play this weekend. That changes things for South Carolina for me. Joe, what'd you learn?
So I couldn't find specifically what I was looking for, but I feel like I've heard that Wagner could be see the field this weekend, which is big. Josenberger is probably, it could be soft tissue for Josenberger. That might be a little more dicey, but the expectation for both of those guys is back in time for the SEC tournament. And Tigert, of course, has been back a couple weeks now and is ramping up and has looked really good his first couple outings.
Love it. Shotty, you got 2 series to pick from: Clemson, Virginia Tech, NC State, UNC.
We'll go Clemson, Virginia Tech. I love the Hokie itself, the logo that has the gobbler on it. But the Clemson, just the purple and orange, it works really well, especially with the batting helmets. I love the batting helmets. The fact that they're purple with the orange brim, I think it pops. It pops so well in the photos. It just makes me think of Jack Leggett every time I see him. There's multiple players I want to take, but I also want to Eric Bakich. Just the fact that Clemson is in this mix right now has been super impressive, and part of that's been Caden Grice. But I got to go on the Virginia Tech side. Jack Hurley plays with a little bit of, I don't know the right word, but you look in his eyes and it's a little bit scary when he's going. When he'll run through a wall, like literally. I've seen him flip over walls. I've seen him steal bases, and the swim tag was a huge play last year against Louisville, and just how fired up he was to have been thrown out yet use a swim move to get safe, and then ignite a rally after it. He just has that fire in his eyes. It's kind of unique. So Jack Hurley is a guy that I love watching.
Love that. Ebert, uniform and player, please.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say, as going 2-8 like twice in the past month with these picks, like you probably shouldn't listen to me. But I do want to say I picked Clemson as my non-field of 64 sleeper coming into the season, and they didn't they started not looking like a good pick, but so far I want to thank them for doing that. But shotgun for everything. Like with Bakich going to Clemson, it's a perfect fit. I mean, everybody talked about how Link Jarrett was a perfect fit for Florida State. Bakich is just as perfect of a fit for Clemson. I love the uniforms. I think of Jack Leggett, just like Shotgun said again. And guys like Caden Grice, those two-way guys that just do everything for their team, are so much fun to watch.
Yep. Joe, I'll go last on this one. Go for it. Who do you like here, uniform player?
Clean sweep on the uniforms. The white Clemson, other than, there's some college baseball teams that are synonymous with uniforms. I think Arizona State chief among them, obviously with the Devils uniforms just across the front. But Clemson's on that list too. The old, the Clemson cut baseball pant was a real thing. Do some Googling, kids, on the Clemson cut baseball pant. But so clean sweep there. Player Drew Hackenberg, Virginia Tech, one of the best arms in the country in terms of arm talent. Just hasn't put it together this season. Doesn't seem to be injured. He's taking the ball every week. But ERA in conference is like 6.50. So they just need him to be better.
Yep. Clemson's purple jerseys, Clemson, you guys, everything you said. Virginia Tech does a lot with their uniforms. They do like the kind of stirrup look. They have very nice uniforms, but Clemson is a historic uniform, so I'm going with that. I'm going to go with Will Taylor for Clemson. Like, he is a football player. Like, he's a legit wide receiver, punt returner on the football team, and he's hitting third with more walks than strikeouts, if memory serves. He's like acting like a real baseball player, like not just some uber athlete who's playing baseball. And that's been big for them. That's been additive in a big way for their lineup. So give me Will Taylor there. Ebert, NC State at UNC.
Yeah, uniforms to me is a slam dunk with North Carolina. The Carolina blue is such a classic look. And again, following college baseball, it's just like they define that color combo, possibly more so than any other team defines any other color combo in college sports. It's just what I think of when I think of North Carolina. For a player, I'm going to have to go. That's a tough one. I wasn't prepared for that. I'm going to go Max Carlson, just because I love the arm. The numbers aren't especially great this year. I know he's not having the season that was totally expected of him, but yeah, I mean, he's just incredibly dynamic right-handed pitcher.
Yeah, and they need him. You nailed it, Peter. Like, he's not been the same guy as last year, so they need Max Carlson to find something here. Joe, who do you like here? Uniform and player. Uniform,
North Carolina. Player, I'm going with LeJames Groover III for NC State. Underrated, really good bat for NC State. Was that at Charlotte as well? Kind of an interesting subplot here too is, NC State, did a lot of work in the transfer portal that, Groover, the last couple of years, Groover and Palali, Carter Trice, Parker Noland, Trevor Candelaria, Calais Harrison, and it's kind of been a mixed bag for them with some of those guys. But Groover has been a big hit for them. Excellent season at the plate.
Yep. Shoddy, uniform and player.
There's no doubt you go with the Argyle. Michael Jordan. Yeah, it's just classic. My favorite colors growing up. I became a North Carolina fan just because of the colors of the uniforms. So definitely going there. I would have went Groover as well, but I'll go with a different transfer. I'll go with Candelaria from Davidson coming over. It's just been a solid player for them. Nothing spectacular on his stats or anything. But that's like Joe said, it's been up and down with their transfers. I mean, Carter Trice is a guy that hasn't been consistently in the starting lineup throughout, and you would expect him to coming over from Old Dominion.
Yep, good call. I'll do my player first. I'll do Vance Honeycutt. He's just not having the same year. Like last year, 29 stolen bases, 25 home runs, but 90 strikeouts. This year, the strikeouts are way down. It's only 47. He's got more walks than strikeouts, but only 12 home runs. He's only hitting 254, only 18 stolen bases. He's still playing elite defense. So I'm going to say Vance Honeycutt. Like, I feel like he's got a streak in him. He's got a run in him. He's playing every day. He looks healthy, but North Carolina's not getting to where they want to get to without Vance Honeycutt finding a groove, getting on a hot streak. I will say North Carolina as well, but I will say this. North Carolina, when they wear, and they do this on Fridays sometimes, they wear white cleats, white pants, white jerseys, and a hat that's got like the baby blue brim, the Carolina blue brim, and the white hat. It's way too much white. They're all baby blues are off the charts good. Their white pants and their Carolina blue top, off the charts good. So stop with the all whites. You're taking a Porsche and you're driving it in a school zone. Like I need to let the shaft out on the uniforms, North Carolina, if you're listening. So
can I point out that Judas said that he has only 12 home runs and how much that says about this era currently versus maybe 10 years ago, where 12 home runs, you'd be like, oh my God, someone's got 12 home runs. That's amazing.
You know what? None of us have had this conversation, Shoddy, but it is, I think about this. Chris Bryant hit 31 home runs in that era in 2013 and out-homered 226 teams. How many home runs would Chris Bryant hit in this era? Like 50? Would he hit 50? I mean, how did he possibly hit 31 in that era?
He basically would get one pitch in at bat, and against the better teams, it was one or two pitches a game, and he just crushed every one of them. Is what it felt like. Everyone in the WCC, whether it was a coach or an SID, all had a Chris Bryant story. Like, oh man, he hit this one over this shed out here. Oh, and hasn't even seen a ball go that far, type of thing. He just mashed constantly until he got into the regional, actually, his final season. He struggled in that regional.
Yep. Crazy. You might have even been there, Shoddy, but the 2013 WCC championship was played in Stockton, California. I had the championship game, but when they played the semifinal game against BYU, first 17 pitches Chris Bryant saw that night, 16 were balls. So it was basically BYU smartly basically said, like, look, you're not participating this evening, Mr. Bryant. Like we're not going to chuck it in there and watch you hit balls 7,000 feet. That ain't happening. So very good. Boys, before we wrap, a lot of great stuff on the website. If you type in save23 at checkout, you'll get 20% off. That's D1Baseball.com. Get yourself a subscription to SEC Extra as we come down the stretch run. Lots of great stuff from Shoddy and Ebert. Did the digest the other night. Me and Ebert, we what do they call it? We piggybacked the digest last weekend. Joe cranking out great stuff for SEC Extra. And that's it. Gentlemen, this was fun. Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Runes. Always a pleasure. Thanks to our special guests. And sorry, Kendall and Aaron, you guys are just out. I just don't know.
Yeah, Kendall and Aaron, don't call us. We'll call you. We're gonna give you a little break. That's the classic coaching move, right? It's like, hey, you kick a guy out of practice and say, don't come back until we call you. Really, really make him squirm. So well played.
It's nothing personal, Kendall and Aaron. It's just business.
That's it. Very good. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. We will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.